As you may know, there are already quite a few examples of ex-feminists who have either moved away from the movement or have decided to be critical about it, and the rest of the feminists didn't take it easy. Lacey Green is one example that comes to mind. She started having open discussions with people from the other side of the ideological spectrum in order to widen her views and understandings, and the radical womanists didn't like it. They harassed and blamed her of siding with the enemy. I read. Lacey Green is a significant force on YouTube. Her series has provided several people with accurate, non-judgmental education that is not often seen in the United States. She has also made videos discussing gender equality, intersectionality, and other social justice topics. Her videos gained her a respectable following in addition to no small amount of men's rights activist trolls, which led her to take a break. However, she recently returned to YouTube and made a video called Taking the Red Pill, where she announced that she intends to have debates with alt-right figures to create a dialogue and bridge the divide between those who advocate for social justice and those who oppose it. This inevitably led to backlash from those who once considered her a friend and ally, mainly people of color and LGBTQ+ folks, after which she published a second video defending her actions. How dare you, Lacey Green, how dare you have open debates with the enemy? Another person that faced a similar fate was Nora Vincent, which Detective Warg covered in a recent video. By the way, shout out to Warg, you freaking crazy gigachat direwolf, keep up the great work, man. She lived a couple of years pretending to be a man to better understand what issues men face. Here's what some womanists commented, and mind you, this is one of the soft opinions. Nora Vincent is a conservative lesbian journalist who for a year and a half dressed as a man and to explore gender identity. Holy crap, do you even read your own articles, damn it? Written in a very accessible and witty manner, Self-Made Man is a fascinating, if problematic, read. While the anecdotes she shares of her experiences seductively draw you into the story, the conclusions that Vincent draws based on her own observations and interactions are painted with far too broad of brushstrokes. Dangerously essentialist, she writes about masculinity as if it were a solid, eternal, and universal thing, which it is, rather than fluid and personal. Solid, eternal, and universal thing. Gentlemen, when you take a look at past civilizations, and I'm talking thousands of years back, when there was no easy access of information across the globe, a man meant the same thing in one part of the world as in another, meaning different cultures with different languages, with different religions and moral norms and laws had similar views on what men are and what their purpose in society is. And they didn't communicate to each other, they didn't copy from one another. A man was perceived almost identically by the Mayans and Aztecs as by the Egyptians, for example. Interesting why that may be. She shoves aside the way it intersects with race, class, and other axes of identity. Bowling leagues, strip clubs, and first dates are interesting places to explore versions of masculinity, but it's not as if these can hold the truth about what it means to be a man across time and space and with different cultures. Across time and space, yeah, no crap, Sherlock. Nobody can freaking give a specific life example of what men are in different cultures, because nobody can be Asian and Caucasian at the same time. But of course, this whole article is just a passive-aggressive attack on a book meant to showcase struggles men have. The woman we'll cover today is Cassie Jane, an ex-feminist who started having chats with men's rights activists, and we will see her experience through her TED Talk. Enjoy yourselves, gentlemen, and let's cover this together.
In 2013, I decided to meet my enemies. I was a 27-year-old award-winning documentary filmmaker and a proud feminist, and I was determined to expose the dark underbelly of the men's rights movement. At that point, all I knew of the men's rights movement was from what I read online, that it's a misogynistic hate group actively working against women's equality.
So at 27 years of age, men's rights activists only meant to her misogyny. Gentlemen, no one should be surprised by this. How many times have we come across a woman saying how all men are evil, how we live in a patriarchy, how every man has internalized misogyny, and all red-pilled men or MTO men or conservative men are actively fighting for women to have less rights? This is what brainwashing looks like. People get fed the same information for many years without any critical thinking, without growing an own opinion. They just repeat the things they've been hearing all along, and they turn out something like this. Let's keep watching.
Well, the vast majority of my previous work was about women's issues. I directed documentaries about reproductive rights, single motherhood, and the need for more girls to get into STEM education. So when I learned that no one had ever documented the men's rights movement in a film before, I saw it as an opportunity to continue fighting for women's equality by exposing those preventing it. So for 1 year, I traveled North America, meeting the leaders and followers of the men's rights movement. I spent anywhere from 2 hours up to 8 hours interviewing each individual men's rights activist, also known as MRA. And I filmed 44 people total. And there's an important rule in documentary filmmaking. As an interviewer, you do not interrupt. So I'm asking questions, and I'm getting their full life story. And in the moment, I didn't realize it. But now looking back, I can see that while I was conducting my interviews, I wasn't actually listening. I was hearing them speak, and I knew the cameras were recording. But in those moments of sitting across from my enemy, I wasn't listening. What was I doing? I was anticipating. I was waiting to hear a sentence, or even just a couple of words in succession that proved what I wanted to believe, that I had found.
Gentlemen, this is what arguing with a lot of womanists feels like. You know, the good thing about the red pill is that you take it. You are not born with it. Most people are raised by blue-pilled standards and blue-pilled ideals, and it takes time and pain to eventually take the red pill. And the good thing is, you're at least sure you made the decision. You came to the realization. What happens with a lot of womanists is that they do not become such. They are raised as such. Their family, their inner circle of friends, the media and the schools shower them with womanist ideologies since a young age. And if they don't analyze and think critically, if they don't question the information that they are given, they just blindly take it as a universal truth. This is why you see so many grown women that still believe the wage gap exists despite all the evidence it doesn't. Because they haven't spent 5 minutes of their lives to actually think about it or do a research.
The misogynists, the ground zero of the war on women. A couple of times I thought I had it. There was one men's rights activist that said to me, "Just walk outside and look around. Everything you see was built by a man." Ooh, his statement felt anti-women. I felt my jaw clench, but I sat quietly, as a documentarian should, while removing all the space between my upper and lower molars. After my year of filming, I was reviewing the 100 hours of footage I had gathered, replaying and transcribing it, which, believe me when I say, no one will ever listen to you more than someone who transcribes your words. You should write that down. So I was typing out every word meticulously, and through that process, I began to realize that my initial knee-jerk reactions to certain statements weren't really warranted, and my feeling offended didn't hold up to intense scrutiny. Was that statement about men having built the skyscrapers and the bridges anti-women? I thought, well, what would be the gender reverse scenario? Maybe a feminist saying, "Just look around. Everyone you see was birthed by a woman." Wow, that's a powerful statement. And it's true. Is it anti-male? I don't think so. I think it's acknowledging our unique and valued contributions to our society. Well, luckily, while I was making the Red Pill movie, I kept a video diary, which ended up tracking my evolving views. And in looking back on the 37 diaries I recorded that year, there was a common theme. I would often hear an innocent and valid point that a men's rights activist would make, but in my head, I would add on to their statement a sexist or anti-woman spin, assuming that's what they wanted to say but didn't. So here are two examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist, an MRA, would say to me, "There are over 2,000 domestic violence shelters for women in the United States, but only one for men. Yet multiple reputable studies show that men are just as likely to be abused."
This is absolutely true. Many studies show that women are equally as prone to hit their partners as men are. Both genders face abuse. And this is something I mentioned on my introduction video, the society's perception. If a woman calls the police because she has been abused, the police officers will rush like their behind is on fire. If a man does the same call, yeah, the police will come because it's their job, but what attitude do you think they will have? If a woman tells her friends she has been hit, they will immediately advise her to sue him, but if a man tells his friends the same thing, he will be probably taken as a joke. But anyway, back to the video.
I would hear them say, "We don't need 2,000 shelters for women. They're all lying about being abused. It's all a scam." But in looking back on all the footage I'd gathered of men's rights activists talking about shelters, and all the blogs they've written and the video live streams they posted on YouTube, they're not trying to defund women's shelters, not at all. All they're saying is that men can be abused too, and they deserve care and compassion. Second example, a men's rights activist would say to me, "Where is justice for the man who was falsely accused of raping a woman? And because of this accusation, he loses his college scholarship and is branded with the inescapable title of rapist." I would hear them say, "A woman being raped isn't a big deal." It's as if I didn't hear the word falsely accused of rape.
Now, some may think that this woman is exaggerating. She is not. It's really surprising the mental gymnastics that can be done by someone who has been indoctrinated. And this happens all the time. Instead of taking information as it is, straightforward, someone who doesn't possess critical thinking will automatically translate each sentence in a way he finds comfortable.
All I heard was he was accused of rape. Of course, rape is a big deal, and all the men's rights activists I met agreed it is a horrible thing to have happened to anyone. I eventually realized what they're saying is they're trying to add to the gender equality discussion. Who is standing up for the good-hearted, honorable man that loses his scholarship, his job, or worse yet, his children, because he's accused of something he absolutely did not do? Well, I couldn't keep denying the points they were making. There are real issues. But in my effort to avoid agreeing with my enemy completely, I changed from putting words in their mouth to acknowledging the issue, but insisting they are women's issues. So here are two examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist would say to me, "Men are far more likely to lose their child in a custody battle." And I would counter, "Well, because women are unfairly expected to be the caretaker, it's discrimination against women that women get custody more often." Yeah. I'm not proud of that. Second example, an MRA would say to me, "Men are roughly 78% of all suicides throughout the world." And I would counter with, "But women attempt suicide more often. So ha." Ha? It's not a contest, but I kept making it into one. Why couldn't I simply learn about men's issues and have compassion for male victims without jumping at the opportunity to insist that women are the real victims.
The reason why is because, as you mentioned, you saw them as the enemy. That's the way that you've been taught to think, that men are the enemy, they are the reason the patriarchy exists, they are the reason women don't have rights and suffer. It's one-on-one manipulation. You're showed something you love and deem important, and then you're told that it will suffer due to something. This is how hate is created. Womanists are taught that they deserve more rights, that they don't have them, and that men have been making them suffer and keeping them from being free throughout history. So womanists are led to hate men, all men. How many times have you heard the phrase, if you're not with us, you're against us. If you're not a womanist, you're part of the patriarchy. You are a part of the problem. You are hurting us. I'm sorry for the long pause, but I need to mention, one of the best fuels to induce people to take action is hate. This is also the way wars are led. Nobody is willing to risk his life to take another life of a person he doesn't know. The way soldiers have been motivated to risk their lives is by applying this formula that I mentioned before. This thing that you love, your family and your country, your freedoms, is endangered by your enemy. And then soldiers are manipulated into hating the opponent because they are baited by the things they love. Let's keep watching.
Well, after years of researching and fact-checking what the men's rights activists were telling me, there is no denying that there are many human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men. Paternity fraud uniquely affects men. The United States Selective Service, in the case of a draft, still uniquely affects men. Workplace deaths, disproportionately men. War deaths, overwhelmingly men. Suicide, overwhelmingly men. Sentencing disparity, life expectancy, child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education, homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources for male victims of domestic violence. So many issues that are heartbreaking if you are the victim or you love someone who is the victim.
Quick question. How many times have you heard my body, my choice spoken about in the media? And how many times have you heard any of these issues just mentioned being socially talked about? Leave a comment down below.
Of any one of these issues. These are men's issues, and most people can't name one because they think, well, men have all the rights, they have all the power and privilege. But these issues deserve to be acknowledged. They deserve care, attention, and motivation for solutions. Before making the Red Pill movie, I was a feminist of about 10 years, and I thought I was well-versed on gender equality issues. But it wasn't until I met men's rights activists that I finally started to consider the other side of the gender equality equation. It doesn't mean I agreed with all that they said, but I saw the immense value in listening to them and trying to see the world through their eyes. I thought if I could get my audience to also listen to them, it could serve as a rung on the ladder, bringing us all up to a higher consciousness about gender equality. So in October 2016, the film was released in theaters, and articles and critic reviews started to roll in. And that's when I experienced how engaged the media is in groupthink around gender politics. And I learned a difficult lesson. When you start to humanize your enemy, you, in turn, may be dehumanized by your community. And that's what happened to me. Rather than debating the merit of the issues addressed in the film, I became the target of a smear campaign. And people who had never seen the movie protested outside the theater doors, chanting that it was harmful to women. It certainly is not. But I understand their mindset. If I never made this movie and I heard that there was a documentary screening about men's rights activists that didn't show them as monsters, I too would have protested the screenings or at least signed the petitions to ban the film because I was told that they were my enemy. I was told that men's rights activists were against women's equality. But all the men's rights activists I met support women's rights and are simply asking the question, why doesn't our society care about men's rights? Well, the greatest challenge I faced through this whole process, it wasn't the protests against my film, and it wasn't how I was treated by the mainstream media, even though it got pretty disgusting at times. The greatest challenge I faced was peeling back the layers of my own bias. It turns out I did meet my enemy while filming. It was my ego saying that I was right and they were subhuman.
This thing that she just mentioned is extremely dangerous. Thinking that you are right and the ideologically opposing group is stupid or totally invalid. This is a common trait in dictators, thinking they know better, thinking they're above the rest, thinking they can fix things better than anyone else. This is why it's so important to have open discussions and not close yourself in a circle of people repeating the same information to you over and over again. This is how indoctrination works, and this is why some schools brainwash people so easily.
It's no secret now that I no longer call myself a feminist, but I must clarify, I am not anti-feminist, and I am not a men's rights activist. I still support women's rights, and I now care about men's rights as well. However, I believe if we want to honestly discuss gender equality, we need to invite all voices to the table. Yet this is not what is happening. Men's groups are continually vilified, falsely referred to as hate groups, and their voices are systematically silenced. Do I think either movement has all the answers? No. Men's rights activists are not without flaws, and neither are feminists. But if one group is being silenced, that's a problem for all of us. If I could give advice to anyone in our society at large, we have to stop expecting to be offended, and we have to start truly, openly, and sincerely listening. That will lead to a greater understanding of ourselves and others, having compassion for one another, working together towards solutions because we all are in this together. And once we do that, we can finally heal from the inside out. But it has to start with listening. Thank you for listening.
It has to start with listening. Imagine this woman never got to speak with the men's rights activist. Maybe today she will still be a womanist crying about the wage gap and all that. And notice how it took her years of listening to other people's perspective, transcribing what they said, analyzing it, thinking it through, to get out of the mold that she had been brainwashed into. Props to this woman. I truly respect people who are self-conscious and who are able to admit that they were wrong. I honestly wish all modern, independent women had a look at this video and thought about their unreasonable standards, about the way they see men, about their expectations, etc. Everything starts with introspection. But gentlemen, I cannot change who womanists are, so let me end the video with an advice to you. Be critical about any and all information you receive. It's the only way to stay on the right path and to continue growing and learning. With that being said, thank you if you've made it till the end. If you want to see the TED Talk that this woman gave, her name is Cassie J. And she also made a red-pilled movie, which is quite interesting. So go check that out if you're interested. I wish you a good and productive day, and I'll see you next time.